What's the lie you believed the longest in your life? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. One time my mom was at the store, and she brought home something for herself, my sister, and my dad, and 5-year-old me was like, "What did you get for me?" And to prevent me from being left out, she reached into the bag and was like, "Oh, I got you this potato masher." And for years before anyone mashed any potatoes, they came and asked me if they could use it. Story 2. When I was very young, we had a pet hamster. He got out of his cage, so my dad put the cage in the basement thinking he might get hungry and get back in. One morning I woke up and there was the hamster in his cage in the usual place. I asked my mom how they found him, and she told me she opened the door to the cellar and there he was dragging his cage back up. It wasn't until I was a teenager and remembered the exchange that it occurred to me she obviously made that up. Story 3. When I was little, I found a baby bird on my way home from school. I put it in a cage to keep as a pet. Dad said we couldn't keep and would have to get rid of it, kill it. Next morning I asked where my bird was, and Dad said the mother came and they let it out and it flew away. Years later I realized he killed it when I was sleeping. Years later I was talking to my mom. I mentioned Dad killing that bird of mine from when I was younger. She said he never killed it, but that another bird came and wouldn't leave it alone until Dad opened the bird cage and it went off the side of the deck and flew off. It just didn't know how to fly it on its own when I found him, lol. Story 4. My cat brought a lizard into the house. It was still alive. I decided to build it a terrarium and nurse it back to health. I did so and then released it back into the wild a few days later. My mom told me that the cat immediately went outside and ate the lizard after I had released it when I was 18. She and my dad knew I'd be devastated, so they lied by omission and didn't tell me. The way she sat me down to tell me scared, I thought she was going to tell me something dreadful. I thought I saved that lizard for years. Story 5. That my mom was a redhead. For years I thought she was a natural redhead. She was 40 when I entered the picture, so I always knew she dyed her hair. Just thought it was to cover up her grays. When I was about 35, my niece clued me in on a family secret. When my mom first spotted my dad at work back in the day, she asked around about him. Someone told her, "He only dates redheads." Mom started dyeing her hair from brown to red, and sure enough, she got the date. And eventually, she got the ring. I never suspected. Photos from the 50 feet were like black and white or sepia, and her brown hair looked like it could have been red. But she had 5 kids, and none of us are gingers. Just wasn't something I ever thought about or suspected. And yeah, Dad knows, but didn't broadcast it to us kids, so I believed that for ages. Story 6. That other way humans live in the West is sustainable. In the last 100 years alone, over 50% of the planet's wilderness has been destroyed. In that time, the world population has also gone from 2 billion to 8.5 billion. On top of that, the cobalt in the phone you're reading this on was probably mined by slaves, many of them children. Your phone was then assembled in a factory in China with atrocious working conditions. Your clothes were made in sweatshops. Our way of life and all the cool products we have access to at reasonable prices are predicated on the suffering of people in other parts of the world and the unsustainable use of the Earth's natural resources. Story 7. That if you love someone, you will always agree with them. Took me 20+ years to unlearn the deep dread and fear of sharing an opinion with someone I cared about and realizing they disagreed. I was raised that if you disagree with someone, you should keep quiet because it's embarrassing them and talking back. I didn't realize how deep that fear went through me until I broke down in therapy because I thought my BF was going to leave me because I didn't like the dinner his mom made. When I was a kid, I would have gotten smacked for that. It's so weird being allowed to say, "I'm really not feeling that, I love you, but it's just not for me," without instant and serious consequences. Story 8. I had a yellow parakeet named Tweety as a kid. She was super friendly and I would hold her all the time. One day I came out to see she had turned blue. She also was terrified of me. I asked my mom and she said that Tweety got out of her cage and my cat had spooked her. She said when parakeets got scared, they turned blue. Oh, okay. That's why she is so scared. The cat spooked her. Years later, they told me the cat had eaten Tweety and my dad went to the pet store and grabbed the wrong color replacement bird. Story 9. That my family was well off when I was growing up. Well, Dad was, off in a different country doing hikers and blow with the family's business's wealth. Very little of that came over to my mom and my siblings. So little that I qualified for free lunch vouchers. This was like 30 years ago. And I still remember really wanting a 6-inch Subway cold cut combo that they serve for $1.50 during lunch. Never did get that sandwich. My dad had me believing I was second-generation wealthy. It wasn't until my wife woke me up to reality that I realized that I basically grew up in a dump, just barely above getting food stamps. Story 10. When I was a kid, it was when I was in middle school, so probably 12 or 13 years old. I was coming home from school. My dad told me on the car ride back that our power went out, and the maintenance guys were coming to fix it in a week. As an adult, I found out it was because my family was on the verge of bankruptcy and couldn't afford most bills. So the company shut off the power to our house. But when I was a kid, I had fun with it. We lit these lanterns we use for camping, took out the board games and played all night, did some homework by the light, and just had a fun family night. I don't have any bad memories from that experience, and it's because my family took the opportunity to be closer from it. The look in my dad's eyes when he told me about it years later made me so sad because it looked like he felt like he let me down. But as an adult, I get it. I would have said the same to my kids if I was in that situation. He prioritized my stress and well-being over his by not letting his kids know we had no money. That man is my hero. Also, sidebar, he's now doing really good for himself. His bankruptcies fell off of his credit report because this was years ago, and I'm really proud of him. He kinda went bankrupt against his will from the family drama that ensued, so it's amazing to see him not stay down when hit hard. Story 11. So kind of a funny story that goes with this. I'd never heard of taking a dog to the farm being what parents tell their children when their dog travels the Rainbow Bridge. A friend of ours kind of dumped a dog on us, and she was a sweet dog, so we had intended to keep her. However, a few months later, our living situation had to change, and the dog would have wound up cooped up in an apartment all day while we were gone to work. It would not have been fair to the high-energy, herding dog mix that she was. A friend of a friend had a goat farm and thought they could train her to help with the goats. A coworker asked me what we were doing with her, and I just casually replied that she was going to live on a farm. Coworker was inconsolable and I couldn't figure out why. After she calmed down, she finally asked if we were really putting the dog down. Shocked, I replied that no, she was literally going to work on a goat farm. We had a good laugh, but I definitely specified to anyone else that the dog was going to a friend's farm to become a working dog. Story 12. While dating my husband, made a joke about the Chicago Bulls disbanding after their second three-peat. I'm not a big sports ball fan, so I thought he was serious. Just being funny, he told me this whole story about it being done because they kept winning and wanted to give other teams a chance, so the players all went the other teams. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. He was amused, and we went about life. From time to time, the Chicago Bulls' 90s glory would come up as a topic, and I would comment on how awesome it was that they were such good sportsmen, that they disbanded to give others a chance. The first time I repeated it, my husband couldn't believe I still thought that was true and was so amused he didn't correct me. Every time it came up, he said it got funnier and funnier, and at one point he decided to see how long it would go on. Cue about 8 years later, and I'm at work, and it's the NBA playoffs. Lo and behold, someone says the Bulls are their favorite team. Cue my typical comment. But this time, my coworker looked at me and was like, "Did you just say?" The jig was up, and I went home and said, "Hey, did you know the Bulls never stopped being a team?" My husband almost wept. Himself, he was laughing so hard and said, "Someone finally told you." I'll admit, it's pretty funny. Story 13. My mom didn't know how to be nice. She was unintentionally mean, and she didn't understand how to be otherwise. That was a lie that I told to myself. I was 36 years old on a Tuesday evening when it hit me like a bus. She knew she was being mean. She intentionally said mean things to me on purpose. She knew she made me feel bad, and she did it on purpose. I hysterically choked, cried for a solid 45 minutes, and went into a full-blown panic attack. I stopped speaking to her for 2 years because of this realization. I was completely devastated and raging angry. I remember soon after my crying panic attack, I drove to the store to buy smokes. It had been years, and I was ready to fight every person I came across. I decided to just go home. Learning the truth of this lie, that my mother picked at me with hate needles my whole life intentionally, completely destroyed me. We talk now, but not often. We used to live next door to each other, and unrelated to this, I moved 2,000 miles away a year ago. Story 14. That I'm somehow special and normal rules don't apply to me. Spent the last 20 or so years believing that I can build muscle faster than anyone else. I can acquire skills faster than anyone else. That I'm smarter than everyone else. That I'm more talented than anyone else. This belief prevented me from succeeding on any level in my life so far, just spinning tires and getting fed up with myself over and over. I am 25 this year, and I think I've finally accepted the fact that I am not special in any way, shape, or form, and this realization is allowing me to now start where I am and move forward at the rate I am comfortable with. It's going to be a long and hard process, as I still believe that I can become a huge music artist in my own right. I've already invested 10 years of my life into it, so I don't see any point in stopping, but I am starting a career as a train conductor at the end of the month and foresee myself living that career grind relentlessly for the next few years, investing all I can into music and working on actually making that dream of mine come true no matter the cost. It's all I want for myself. I spent so long thinking about what others want and need that I forgot about taking care of myself and how important it is. Essentially, I'm starting from ground zero, and the only way is up from here on out. Story 15. It's going to be unbelievable that anyone could be this much of a gullible idiot, but truth is stranger than fiction. I was at a friend's house when I was 11 and we were eating cupcakes. I started to lick the paper wrapping, scraping at it with my teeth to get off every crumb. My friend asked me to stop because it was gross. I said no, and that's when she told me the paper had rats in it. I was initially skeptical of this notion, but she went on to spin this story of how her mom, who was a teacher, went on a class trip to the factory where they made them. And some of the kids saw a guy pick up a rat and just toss it into the machinery. And that he told the kids they do it all the time. Don't ask me why I believe this. Don't ask me why this didn't make me stop eating anything in a supposedly rat-contaminated paper wrapper. There is no logic here. But I never licked a cupcake or muffin wrapper again. For over a decade, this was just something I believed and never questioned. Then one day, when I am like 28 years old, I was eating cupcakes with a friend. She started licking her wrapper, and I said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." And she replied, "Why?" I opened my mouth to say, "Because it has rats in it," and then froze, as my adult brain put on the brakes because obviously that statement was ridiculous. At which point I had to explain to my friend what I was about to say and why, and we had a long laugh about how I had believed this for so long. My only defense is the idea was so ingrained in my mind that I never questioned it until I was about to say it to someone else and realized how dumb it sounded. Also, to this day I don't lick cupcake wrappers even though I know there's no reason not to. It's just become a habit. Sometimes I wish I knew where my friend from middle school is now so I can share how her lie, which she probably wouldn't even remember making up, affected my entire life. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.